Hello guys. Welcome to Pika Fiction. So in this video, we will see what if Ash became a Pokemon master and was destined to marry all female companions. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The crown of thorns. The air in the Hall of Origin was not air. It was a suspension of starlight and silence. A vacuum that did not suffocate but rather amplified the sound of one's own heartbeat until it sounded like a war drum. Ash Ketchum stood on the precipice of creation, his boots resting on a floor of translucent glass that swirled with the nebulae of unformed universes. He did not kneel. He hadn't knelt in 3 years. Not since the incident at Galar. Not since the World Coronation Series had transitioned from a tournament into a global defense initiative. "You look tired, Chosen One." The voice did not come from a mouth. It resonated directly against the skeletal structure of Ash's chest, vibrating in his marrow. Ash looked up. The golden wheel of Arceus dominated the horizon, a blinding construct of divine geometry. The alpha Pokémon did not loom. It simply existed, occupying every angle of vision simultaneously. "I'm not the Chosen One anymore," Ash said, his voice rough, contrasting sharply with the ethereal chime of the dimension. He adjusted the high collar of his coat, a heavy, reinforced garment of charcoal and crimson, woven with threads that dampened psychic intrusion. "I'm the monarch. There's a difference. One goes on adventures. The other cleans up messes. And the mess grows," Arceus projected. The light shifted, dimming from blinding white to a bruised purple. "The fabric is thinning, Ash. The dissonance between the human spirit and the elemental chaos of Pokémon is widening. We held it together for millennia, but the seams are tearing." Ash rubbed the bridge of his nose. Pikachu, perched on his shoulder, didn't spark or twitch. The electric mouse was a veteran now, his fur slightly coarser, his eyes holding the hard, diamond-sharp gaze of a creature that had felled giants. Pikachu sensed the gravity, his small paws digging into the reinforced fabric of Ash's coat. "I felt the tremor in Kalos last week," Ash admitted. "A mega evolution that didn't stop. The Pokémon burned out. The trainer went catatonic. You're telling me that wasn't an accident?" "It was a symptom. The great dissonance is upon us. The aura that binds your species to ours is evaporating. Soon, Pokeballs will fail. Bonds will sever. The world will revert to a primal state of hunt or be hunted." Ash clenched his fist. The leather of his glove creaked. "So fix it. You're the god here." "I am the architect, not the mason," Arceus replied, the tone carrying a hint of ancient sadness. "I cannot stitch the micro-tears of the mortal plane. That requires a soul that exists in both worlds. It requires the monarch." A platform of light materialized before Ash, displaying a complex, rotating sigil. It looked like a mandala, with 7 empty sockets surrounding a central, burning core. "The Apex Covenant," Arceus intoned. "A metaphysical binding. You must anchor the world's aura through 7 pillars. 7 souls who have resonated with yours across time. You must bind your life force to theirs, creating a web of stability that spans the globe." Ash stared at the sigil. He understood the implication immediately. He wasn't a child anymore. He understood politics, he understood sacrifice, and he understood the weight of the word, bind. "You want me to marry them," Ash said flatly. "Not for love, for a metaphysics equation. Marriage is a human term. The covenant is absolute. It is a fusion of aura. It will protect them, yes, but it will also burden them. They will share your pain, your power, and your target." "No." The refusal was quiet, but it cracked through the Hall of Origin like a whip. "Ash." "I said no." Ash turned his back on the creator of the universe. "I spent 10 years fighting to let people and Pokémon choose their own paths. I'm not drafting my friends into a cosmic war. I'm not turning the women I care about into human stabilizers for your failing reality. There is no other path." "Then I'll make one," Ash snarled, looking over his shoulder, his eyes glowing with a faint, azure luminescence, the raw aura he had learned to suppress. "I'll find the source of the dissonance and I'll crush it. I don't care if it's a legendary, a glitch, or a human organization. But I am not using my friends as tools." The light of Arceus pulsed, a sensation of immense pressure pressing down on Ash's shoulders. For a moment, it felt as though gravity had increased tenfold. Ash didn't buckle. He planted his feet, his aura flaring outward in a jagged wave to meet the divine weight. For a long, tense silence, man and god stood locked in a contest of will. Go then, Arceus whispered, the pressure vanishing instantly. Return to your throne of dirt. But know this, monarch. The Order of Silence knows of the dissonance, too. And they do not seek to fix it. They seek to hasten the end. The world twisted. The starlight dissolved into vertigo. The smell of ozone and fresh rain hit him first. Ash stumbled slightly as he rematerialized, his boots finding purchase on the wet grass. He wasn't in a city. He was on the cliffs overlooking Pallet Town. But it wasn't the Pallet Town of his youth. Below him, the town had evolved. High walls of white stone, reinforced with psychic barriers generated by a rotation of Alakazam and Mr. Mime, encircled the perimeter. It was no longer just a hamlet. It was the unofficial capital of the Pokémon League, the sanctuary of the monarch. Ash exhaled, watching his breath mist in the cool Kanto evening. The transition from the Hall of Origin to Earth always left him with a migraine. Pika Pie, Pikachu murmured, nuzzling Ash's jaw. I know, buddy, Ash sighed, reaching up to scratch the mouse behind the ear. He's getting pushier. Ash began the descent down the cliff path. He moved with a deceptive lethargy, his strides eating up the ground. He didn't need to announce his arrival. The sensors on the perimeter would have already logged his bio-signature. By the time he reached the main gate, the guards, elite rangers in tactical gear, were already saluting. Lord Monarch, the captain said, snapping to attention. Just Ash, Captain, Ash corrected automatically, though he knew it was a losing battle. He walked past them, the heavy steel gates parting silently. Status? Quiet, sir. Professor Oak is in the corral with the starters. Delia is in the main house. And Gym Leader Misty arrived 3 hours ago. Ash paused. His stride hitched for a fraction of a second before resuming. Misty is here? Yes, sir. She's in the greenhouse. Ash nodded, dismissing the guard. He veered off the main path, heading toward the sprawling glass structure attached to the back of the Oak Laboratory. Misty. He hadn't seen her in 6 months. The responsibilities of the Cerulean Gym and his own constant travel to stabilize the regions had turned their relationship into a series of brief, intense video calls and the occasional coordinated crisis response. He pushed open the door to the greenhouse. The humid, warm air washed over him, smelling of wet earth and staryu polish. She was standing by the central tank, feeding a school of recovering horsey. She wore a simplified version of her gym attire. A dark blue tank top and loose tactical cargo pants, her orange hair pulled back into a severe, practical ponytail. She looked stronger than he remembered. The definition in her arms, the way she held herself, she wasn't a kid. She was a warrior who specialized in water. She sensed him. She didn't turn around immediately. She threw the last handful of pellets into the water, wiped her hands on a towel, and then slowly pivoted. Her eyes, that piercing teal, locked onto his. You look like hell, Ash. Ash let out a short, dry laugh. The tension in his chest, the cosmic weight Arceus had placed there, loosened just a fraction. Nice to see you too, Mist. He walked over to her. In the past, they might have yelled. Later, they might have hugged awkwardly. Now, there was just a magnetic pull. He stopped a foot away from her. Arceus? She asked. She knew the signs. The ozone smell, the distant look in his eyes. Arceus, he confirmed. Misty threw the towel onto a bench and crossed her arms. And? Is the world ending again? Is it Tuesday? Something like that. Ash leaned back against a support beam, sliding his hands into his pockets. He wants me to do something I can't do. Since when has can't ever stopped you? This is different. It involves people. It involves dragging people I care about into the line of fire. Misty studied him. She stepped closer, invading his personal space with the confidence of someone who had owned a piece of it for a decade. She reached out, her fingers brushing the collar of his coat, straightening it. Ash. Look at me. He looked down at her. We're already in the line of fire, she said softly. Do you think I sit in Cerulean City safe and sound while you're out there wrestling legendaries? Every time you make a move, the world looks at us. We're your weakness, Ash. We know it. We accepted it a long time ago. I don't want you to be a weakness, Ash murmured. I want you to be safe. Then you should have stayed a rookie, she countered, her voice sharpening. You became the monarch. You became the apex. You don't get to protect us by pushing us away anymore. That just leaves us exposed. Ash opened his mouth to argue, to explain the covenant, to tell her about the soul binding that would fundamentally alter her existence, but the ground beneath them shuddered. It wasn't an earthquake. It was an impact. A low, thrumming bass note vibrated through the glass of the greenhouse, causing the water in the tanks to ripple violently. Ash's eyes snapped toward the perimeter. His demeanor shifted instantly. The tired traveler vanished. The monarch emerged. "That's not a wild encounter," Ash said, his voice dropping an octave. Pikachu's cheeks sparked, arcs of blue electricity dancing around his face. "Pika." The alarm sirens of Pallet Town began to wail, a jagged, mechanical scream that tore through the evening peace. "Go to the lab," Ash ordered, already moving toward the door. "Secure Oak. Get the balls for the heavy hitters." "Don't tell me what to do. Catch 'em," Misty snapped, but she was already moving, grabbing a belt of Pokeballs from the bench. "I'll cover the west flank. You take the main gate." "Misty. Go." Ash kicked the greenhouse door open and sprinted into the night. The sky above Pallet Town was bleeding. 3 massive airships, silent and sleek, shaped like obsidian arrowheads, hovered over the town barriers. They bore no insignias, no Team Rocket R, no Magma M. They were void black, absorbing the light around them. From their undersides, they dropped pillars of dark metal. The pillars slammed into the earth outside the barriers, burying themselves deep. "Null pillars," Ash hissed, skidding to a halt in the courtyard. As the pillars activated, a wave of distortion rippled out. The psychic barrier protecting the town flickered and died. The Alakazam stationed on the walls collapsed, clutching their heads, screaming silently. This was the Order of Silence. Ash had read the reports. A fanatic paramilitary group that believed Pokémon were chaotic variables that needed to be neutralized for humanity to thrive. They didn't capture Pokémon, they disconnected them. "Status." Ash barked into the comms unit in his collar. "Barriers down." The captain's voice crackled, panic edging his tone. "They're using some kind of suppression field. Our Pokémon. They can't focus. Moves are failing. My Arcanine can't generate flame." "It's the null field," Ash analyzed, his mind racing. "It disrupts the synaptic link between trainer and Pokémon, and dampens elemental energy." The gates exploded inward. Through the smoke, soldiers advanced. They wore sleek, matte gray armor that covered their faces, carrying rifles that glowed with a sickly purple energy. They moved with military precision, firing suppression rounds, nets of energy that wrapped around the defending Pokémon, instantly rendering them unconscious. Ash stood alone in the center of the main thoroughfare. A squad of 12 soldiers spotted him. They raised their weapons. "Target identified," a mechanized voice amplified from the lead soldier. "The Monarch. Engage. Lethal force authorized." Ash didn't reach for a Pokeball. He couldn't. If the null field was active, his reserves, Charizard, Sceptile, Lucario, would be sluggish, vulnerable. He couldn't risk them. But the Order had made a miscalculation. They assumed Ash Ketchum was just a trainer. "Pikachu," Ash said calmly. "Sync." Pikachu leapt from his shoulder. In midair, the mouse didn't just charge electricity, he pulled it from Ash. Ash closed his eyes and pushed. He didn't use a move. He used aura. He reached into the well of energy that Arceus had just tried to recruit, the sheer vitality that made him the monarch. He flooded the connection between him and Pikachu, forcing the bond open despite the null field's static. The air screamed. A pillar of golden thunder erupted from Pikachu, not thin or jagged, but a solid column of light that vaporized the cobblestones. The lead soldiers didn't even have time to fire. The shockwave hit them, sending 12 armored men flying backward as if they had been hit by a truck. Ash opened his eyes. They were glowing bright blue. He stepped forward. "You're trespassing," Ash said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried over the gunfire. More soldiers poured through the breach. A mechanized walker, a bipedal tank armed with a heavy cannon, stomped over the wreckage of the gate. It leveled its gun at Ash. "Pikachu, Iron Tail. Use me as the anchor." Ash extended his hand. Pikachu blurred, moving faster than the eye could track. The mouse grabbed Ash's outstretched hand, swung around using Ash's arm as a pivot point, and launched himself like a projectile. Ash braced his legs, the ground cracking beneath his boots from the torque. He took the strain of Pikachu's momentum, his muscles locking. Pikachu slammed into the walker's leg, his tail turning into a blade of white-hot steel. The metal sheared. The walker toppled. Ash didn't stop. He was moving now, a blur of motion. He closed the distance to the nearest soldier. The soldier swung a rifle butt. Ash ducked, swept the man's leg, and palm struck the chest plate. Impact. A pulse of aura transferred from Ash's palm into the armor, short-circuiting the suit's electronics. The soldier went limp. Ash Ketchum was fighting a war on the ground, hand to hand, with a Pokémon acting as his artillery. It was brutal. It was efficient. It was terrifying. Left flank. Misty's voice cut through the chaos. Ash turned. Misty was sliding down a roof embankment, her Starmie spinning beside her. Starmie. Hydro pump. A jet of water blasted a squad trying to flank the lab. But the stream was weak, sputtering. The null field was choking Starmie. Ash. I can't maintain pressure, Misty yelled, landing in a crouch beside him. The field is too heavy. They're targeting the biology, Ash gritted out, blocking a stun baton from an order soldier and tossing the man over his shoulder. Recall Starmie. It's hurting her. I'm not leaving you alone. You can't fight this with water, Misty, it's anti-energy. Then what do we do? Ash looked up. The lead airship was descending. A hatch opened, and a figure descended on a gravity platform. He was tall, wearing a pristine white suit that stood out against the gray armor of his troops. He wore spectacles that glinted in the firelight. He looked like a university dean, not a warlord. Director Silas Vane. The platform stopped 20 feet in the air. Vane looked down at the chaos, at the unconscious soldiers, and finally at Ash. Impressive, Vane's voice projected from speakers on the ship. The data suggested your aura was potent, Ketchum. But to manually override a null field? You are an anomaly. Get off my land, Ash warned, electricity crackling around his fists. We are not here for the land, Vane said, adjusting his glasses. We're here to deliver a message. The era of monsters is over. Humanity must reclaim its destiny from the chaotic whims of these creatures you call partners. Vane gestured. From the ship, a new device was lowered. It looked like a satellite dish, pulsing with a deep, rhythmic thrum. This is a dissonance amplifier, Vane explained calmly. It doesn't just suppress power. It severs bonds. Permanently. Ash felt a cold spike of fear. Not for himself. For Pikachu. For the thousands of Pokémon in the corral. If I activate this at full power, Vane continued, every Pokémon within 10 miles will forget their trainer. They will revert to feral instinct. The carnage will be educational. Ash stepped forward, shielding Misty. What do you want? Surrender, Vane said. Abdicate the title of monarch. Dismantle the League. Allow the Order to implement the separation protocols. You're insane, Misty shouted. I am necessary, Vane replied. You have 10 seconds, monarch. Save your legacy, or save your friends' minds. Ash looked at Pikachu. The mouse was panting, the effort of fighting the field taking its toll. He looked at Misty. She was terrified, not of dying, but of losing the connection to her team. Ash realized then that Arceus was right. He was powerful. He was the strongest trainer in history, but he was one man. He couldn't be everywhere. He couldn't fight an army that attacked the very physics of their world while holding back a god-level threat. He needed the Covenant. He needed the power to override reality itself. Time is up, Vane sighed. He reached for the activation console. Ash closed his eyes. I accept. He didn't say it out loud. He projected it. He threw the thought upward, past the ships, past the atmosphere, back to the Hall of Origin. I accept the Covenant. Give me the power. The response was instantaneous. It didn't come from the sky. It came from the earth. It came from the air. A pillar of light, not golden but a swirling mix of azure and indigo, erupted from Ash's body. It was so intense it physically pushed the darkness of the night away. The null field shattered. The feedback loop screamed through the Order's equipment. Soldiers clutched their helmets as their visors shattered. The dissonance amplifier sparked and exploded. Vane's platform wavered. For the first time, the director looked rattled. What is this? Ash opened his eyes. They were no longer just blue. They were white, rimmed with the colors of the elements. He didn't look at Vayne. He looked at Misty. Misty, Ash said. His voice echoed, sounding like two people speaking at once. Take my hand. Misty didn't hesitate. She didn't ask questions. She saw the power, she felt the terrifying scale of it, and she reached out. As their fingers touched, the world turned white. The first bond. Ash felt Misty's soul. It wasn't a metaphor. He felt the cool, rushing current of her will. He felt her stubbornness, her hidden fears, her fierce loyalty. He felt the years of waiting, the years of watching him leave. He pulled that energy in. He mixed it with his own. Giara. From the direction of the lab's pool, a roar tore the sky. Misty's Gyarados, usually contained, burst from the water. But it wasn't just Gyarados. The serpent was glowing with the same azure light as Ash. It mega-evolved without a stone. It grew larger, its scales turning into iridescent armor. Ash turned to Vayne. He raised a hand. Leave. The word hit the airship like a physical blow. The hull buckled. Now, Gyarados unleashed a hydro pump, but powered by the Covenant, it was a laser of pressurized ocean. It struck the lead ship, shearing the stabilizer wing clean off. Vayne stumbled, clutching the rail of his platform. He looked at Ash, his eyes wide with calculation and genuine fear. Retreat. Vayne ordered. All units, fall back. We have the data, go. The order of silence was disciplined. They didn't panic. They threw down smoke canisters and retreated to the remaining transports. Vayne's platform retracted into the damaged ship. As the ships turned to flee, limping into the clouds, the unnatural silence of the null field lifted. The sounds of the night returned. The crickets. The wind. The distant cries of startled Pidgey. The light faded from Ash. He stood there, his hand still gripping Misty's. His knees hit the dirt first. Ash. Misty dropped with him, catching him before he face planted. He was gasping for air, sweat soaking his hair. The coat felt like it weighed a ton. The surge of power had vanished, leaving a hollow ache in his bones. What was that? Misty whispered, holding him up, her hands trembling slightly. Ash, what did you just do? Ash looked up at her. The white glow was gone from his eyes, replaced by a deep, exhausted brown. But something had changed. The connection between them hadn't severed when he let go of her hand. He could still feel her concern in the back of his mind, like a radio left on low volume. I made a deal, Ash rasped. To save us, with who? With Destiny. Ash struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on her. He looked at the burning wreckage of the gate, then up at the stars where Arceus watched. 1 down, Ash muttered. 6 to go. 6 what? Misty asked, guiding him toward the lab where Professor Oak was emerging, looking pale but alive. Ash stopped. He turned to Misty, placing a hand on her shoulder. He needed her to understand before the politics started, before the world weighed in. Misty, he said, his voice steadying. I have to form the Apex Covenant. The Order. They're just the beginning. To stop what's coming, I have to bind the world's aura. Okay, she said slowly, processing. And how do you do that? I have to unite with 7 pillars. 7 people I trust more than anyone else. He looked at her hand, then back to her eyes. You just became the first one. Misty stared at him. She looked at her hand, which still tingled with the phantom electricity of their bond. She looked at the destruction the power had wrought, and the safety it had provided. A slow, wry smile touched her lips. It was the smile of the Cerulean gym leader who had never backed down from a challenge. Well, she said, shifting his arm over her shoulder to take his weight. It's about time you admitted you needed me, Ketchum. Ash let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for years. Yeah, I guess it is. He looked toward the horizon, toward the south. We have to move fast, Ash said, the monarch taking control again. Vayne knows now. He knows I can counter his tech. He'll go after the others to stop the Covenant from completing. Others? Misty asked as they walked. Who's next? Ash thought of the map Arceus had shown him. He thought of a girl with a red ribbon in her hair, likely performing in a glittering hall in Kalos. Serena, Ash said. Misty stiffened slightly, just for a heartbeat, before relaxing. Of course it is. Well, we better get to the airport. I have a feeling she's not going to be as easy to recruit as I was. You weren't easy, Mist, Ash smiled weakly. You were just. Inevitably. Keep talking like that and I'll hydro pump you myself. They walked into the light of the laboratory, the bond between them humming, a newly forged chain in the armor of the world. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. The iron rose the suit fit, but it felt like a cage. Ash stood before the floor-to-ceiling mirror in the prep suite of the Indigo Plateau, adjusting the cufflinks of a tailored black dress shirt. He hadn't worn a baseball cap in 3 days. He felt naked without it, exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the heavy charcoal blazer he pulled on. Stop fidgeting, Misty said from the doorway. She leaned against the frame, arms crossed. She had traded her tactical gear for a gown of deep cerulean silk that flowed like water, slid high up the thigh to allow for movement. A strap of Pokeballs was concealed beneath the fabric, strapped to her leg. She looked stunning, and entirely lethal. I hate this part, Ash muttered, turning to face her. Give me a legendary rampage any day. At least Lugia doesn't sue you for property damage. This is the battlefield tonight, Ash, Misty said, walking over to straighten his lapel. Her touch was different now. Since the bond formed in Pallet Town, there was a low-level hum when they made contact, a constant reminder of the energy they shared. The Council is terrified. They saw the satellite footage of the Azure Light. They think you're building a weapon. I am the weapon, Ash said grimly. That's the problem. And tonight, you have to convince them you're a shield. If the League turns on you, we're fighting a war on 2 fronts. We can't handle Vayne and the Indigo Council at the same time. Ash sighed, running a hand through his unruly hair, which refused to be tamed by any amount of styling product. Who's the Kalos representative? That's the wildcard, Misty said, her expression tightening slightly. Kalos sent a special envoy. Someone with high approval ratings who knows the monarch personally. They think she can talk you down. Ash frowned. Who? You'll see. The grand ballroom of the Indigo Plateau was a Shark Tank disguised as a party. Crystal chandeliers the size of Snorlaxes hung from the vaulted ceiling, casting prismatic light over the gathering of regional champions, corporate donors, and high-ranking league officials. The air smelled of expensive perfume and fear. As Ash and Misty descended the main staircase, the conversation died. Hundreds of eyes fixed on them. Ash walked with the heavy, measured gait of a man who had walked through fire. He didn't wave. He didn't smile for the cameras flashing in the periphery. He scanned the room, exits, sightlines, potential threats. Relax, Misty whispered, her hand looped through his arm. Smile. You're the hero, remember? I remember, Ash murmured. Do they? They reached the floor. Immediately, the sharks began to circle. Counselor Thorn, the head of the Indigo High Command, approached first. He was a thick-set man with a white beard and eyes like flint. Monarch Ketchum, Thorn said, not offering a hand. We were surprised by the light show in Pallet Town. Unsanctioned use of Omega-level energy violates the Treaty of Galar. It was a defensive action, Counselor, Ash replied smoothly. The Order of Silence attacked a research facility, I responded. With enough power to short-circuit the grid in 3 cities, Thorn countered. There are rumors, Ketchum. Rumors that you are gathering pillars. That you intend to supersede the League's authority. The League is slow, Thorn. The threat is fast. And that gives you the right to play God. Excuse me. A voice cut through the tension. It was melodic, refined, and carried an undercurrent of steel. I believe the monarch is overdue for a reunion with an old friend. Surely League business can wait for the appetizers? Thorn bristled but stepped aside. Ash turned. Standing there, framed by the crowd, was Serena. She had changed. Gone was the girl uncertain of her path. In her place stood a woman of immaculate poise. She wore a crimson gown that seemed to absorb the light, tailored to perfection. Her honey blonde hair was cut in a chic, asymmetrical bob. She held a glass of champagne with casual elegance, but her blue eyes were locked on Ash with an intensity that made the rest of the room fade. Serena, Ash breathed. She stepped forward, the crowd parting for her. She didn't rush. She glided. Hello, Ash, she said softly. She looked at Misty and offered a genuine, warm smile. You look beautiful, Misty. Blue always was your color. And red is yours, Misty replied, the tension in her shoulders dropping. They weren't rivals. They were veterans of the same war. Good to see you, Serena. Serena turned her gaze back to Ash. The Kalos Council sent me to assess if you've gone rogue. I told them that was ridiculous. Ash Ketchum doesn't go rogue, he just goes forward. I missed you, Ash said, ignoring the politics. I know. Serena stepped into his space, close enough that he could smell the scent of vanilla and roses. I saw the reports. The dissonance. It's affecting the performances in Kalos. Pokémon are losing their rhythm, losing their trust. It's getting worse. Ash lowered his voice. Vayne is here, or his agents are. I know, Serena whispered, her smile not wavering for the cameras. Why do you think I took the assignment? You need eyes in the court, Ash. Misty is your sword. I'm your shield. Monarch Ketchum. The booming voice of Counselor Thorn returned. He had climbed the stage at the end of the hall. Beside him stood a man in a white tuxedo. Ash's blood ran cold. It was Director Silas Vayne. Ladies and gentlemen, Thorn announced into the microphone. The League is dedicated to stability. In light of the recent volatility displayed by our monarch, we have retained the services of a private security firm to audit our defenses. Please welcome Director Vayne of the Silence Group. Polite applause rippled through the room. Ash took a step forward, his aura flaring invisibly. He's lying. Steady, Misty hissed, gripping his arm. Vayne took the microphone. He looked directly at Ash across the sea of people. He smiled, a cold, clinical expression. Thank you, Counselor. We only wish to ensure that humanity remains safe, even from its own protectors. Power without oversight is tyranny. And I fear the monarch has forgotten that he is a man, not a myth. A waiter passed by with a tray of drinks. Serena reached out, took 2 flutes, and handed one to Ash. To oversight, she said loudly enough for the nearby dignitaries to hear. Ash looked at her, confused. He raised the glass. Don't drink it, Serena whispered, her lips barely moving, her smile fixed. Ash froze. Serena turned toward the waiter, who was trying to meld back into the crowd. Her expression shifted. The diplomat vanished. The performer, the master of the stage and timing, emerged. Oh, excuse me, she called out. She didn't stumble. It was a calculated movement. She tripped, splashing the contents of Ash's glass onto a potted plant beside her. The liquid sizzled. The plant withered instantly, the leaves turning black and crumbling to ash. The room went silent. My, Serena said, her voice cutting through the silence like a razor. That's a very dry vintage, Director Vayne. Acidic, even. Ash dropped the glass. It shattered. The waiter bolted. Pikachu. Ash barked. Pikachu, who had been hiding under the buffet table, blurred into motion. He tackled the waiter, pinning him to the ground with a spark of warning electricity. Ash turned to the stage. The political veneer was gone. You tried to poison me, Ash said. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His voice carried the weight of an avalanche. I have no idea what you imply, Vayne said smoothly, though his grip on the podium tightened. Clearly a rogue actor. Stop lying. Ash stepped forward. The air pressure in the room dropped. The chandeliers began to rattle. You want to talk about oversight? You want to talk about safety? Ash raised his hand. Serena. Serena turned to him. She didn't look frightened. She looked ready. She had seen the bond with Misty. She felt the resonance in the air. She knew what was asked of her. I'm here, Ash, she said. They think power is a weapon, Ash said, his eyes beginning to glow with the blue light. Show them what it really is. Show them the grace. He reached out. Serena took his hand, the second bond. It wasn't like the crash of the ocean with Misty. When Ash touched Serena, the sensation was like stepping into a warm hearth after a blizzard. It was fire, but controlled. It was passion refined into purpose. The light that erupted from them wasn't a jagged explosion. It was a blooming lotus of rose gold energy. It swept through the room, warm and overwhelming. People gasped, shielding their eyes. But the light didn't hurt. It passed through them, and for a moment, the fear in the room evaporated. The tension vanished. The aggressive posture of the security guards melted away. It was an aura of forced empathy. Ash felt Serena's mind mesh with his. He felt her acute social awareness, her ability to read a crowd, her dazzling confidence. She stabilized his raw anger, refining it into charisma. Ash looked at Vayne through the golden haze. This is the covenant, Ash spoke. His voice was harmonized with Serena's. sounding like a choir. It is not a weapon. It is a bridge. You want to sever the bond between humans and Pokémon? You'll have to sever us first. He squeezed Serena's hand. The light pulsed, washing over the entire Indigo Plateau. The null tech, concealed in Vane's pocket, a small jammer, sparked and died, overwhelmed by the sheer density of the emotion. The light faded, leaving a soft, golden afterglow around Ash and Serena. Serena didn't let go. She stepped closer, smoothing the lapel of his jacket again, her eyes shining with the power she now harbored. I believe, Serena said, addressing the stunned council, that the monarch has just demonstrated his control, unless anyone else wishes to serve poison. Councillor Thorn looked at the withered plant, then at Vane, then at the glowing pair. He swallowed hard. Director Vane, Thorn said, his voice shaky. Perhaps your services are not required tonight, please leave. Vane stared at Ash. The hatred in his eyes was absolute. He had lost the political narrative. He adjusted his glasses, bowed slightly, and walked off the stage. This isn't over, Ketchum, Vane whispered as he passed the security detail. Ash ignored him. He looked down at Serena. Are you okay? He asked, his voice returning to normal, though the bond remained, a warm thread in his mind. I feel incredible, Serena breathed, looking at her hands. It's like the spotlight is always on. I can feel everyone in the room. I can feel you. Misty stepped up on his other side, her own aura humming in recognition of the new connection. 2 down, Misty noted, eyeing the stunned crowd. But Vane walked away. He's going to escalate. Let him, Ash said. He felt stronger. With Misty, he had resilience. With Serena, he had presence. The hollow ache Arceus had left was filling up. Where to next? Serena asked, ready to follow. Ash looked at the map in his mind. The next signal was erratic, fiery, and moving fast. Hoenn, Ash said. May is in trouble. Chapter 2 end. Chapter 3. Winds of the Hoenn. The sky over Hoenn wasn't blue. It was a bruised, choking gray. Ash stood on the open ramp of a high-speed Dragonite-class transport, the wind whipping his coat violently around his legs. Below, the lush green canopy of the Petalburg Woods was coated in a thick layer of soot. To the north, Chimney Mountain was no longer just smoking, it was glowing, a jagged wound in the earth-bleeding magma. Thermal scans are spiking, Serena shouted over the roar of the wind, tapping at a holographic display projected from her wrist. Tech gifted by the Kalos High Council. The pressure inside the volcano isn't natural, it's rhythmic. They're pumping it. They're trying to trigger a super eruption, Misty added, standing beside Ash, her hand resting on his shoulder to steady herself against the turbulence. If that mountain goes, half of Hoenn is buried in ash. It's a hostage situation, Ash. But the hostage is the region. Ash didn't look at the screens. He looked at the ground. He could feel the earth screaming. The dissonance here was loud, a grinding tectonic friction that made his teeth ache. We're not landing at the airport, Ash said, fastening a rebreather mask over the lower half of his face. Drop us at the staging ground. Vane's men will be watching the main roads. Ash, Serena warned, the air toxicity down there is lethal. Not for us, Ash said, his eyes flashing with the dual lights of azure and rose gold. The lingering resonance of his two bonds. We drop. Now. The staging ground was a chaotic triage center set up on the outskirts of Rustboro. Tents fluttered in the hot, ash-laden wind. Rangers were scrambling to coordinate evacuations, but the panic was palpable. In the center of the storm, a woman was shouting orders. She wore a ragged red bandana tied around her forehead to keep the sweat out of her eyes. Her contest dress was long gone, replaced by practical cargo shorts, heavy boots, and a scorched sleeveless vest. She was covered in soot, her arms bandaged, pointing toward a line of transport trucks. I don't care what the schedule says. Get the elderly out first. Blaziken, clear that debris. A massive Blaziken kicked a fallen tree trunk aside like it was a twig, clearing the road for an ambulance. May. Ash landed first, his boots hitting the dirt with a heavy thud. Misty and Serena flanked him, their Pokémon, Starmie and Delphox, materializing instantly to form a perimeter. May spun around, ready to fight. When she saw the charcoal coat, the Pikachu, and the familiar messy hair, her shoulders slumped, just for a second, before tensing up again. She marched over to him. She didn't hug him. She punched him in the chest, hard. You took your time, catch him, she yelled, her voice hoarse from the smoke. I've been holding this line for 3 days. The League is useless. They can't get close to the mountain without their electronics frying. Nice to see you too, May, Ash said, rubbing his sternum. He respected the hit. It had weight behind it. What's the situation? The Order has a battalion dug in at the Jagged Pass, May explained rapidly, ignoring the odd looks Serena and Misty were getting from the Rangers. They have some kind of frequency emitter. It makes the wild Pokémon go berserk. My team is fighting exhaustion just trying to keep the peace, let alone attack. It's the dissonance amplifier, Ash said grimly. They're weaponizing the planet's pain. May looked at Misty, then at Serena. She clocked the way they stood, not behind Ash, but beside him, radiating a faint, perceptible power. She saw the way Serena's eyes seemed to track the emotional state of the refugees, and how Misty's presence seemed to cool the stifling air. So, the rumors are true, May said, wiping soot from her cheek. You're building an army. A covenant, Serena corrected gently, stepping forward. We're here to help, May. We need to shut that machine down. Then we stop talking and start climbing, May snapped. I know a path the Rangers missed. It's steep, it's dangerous, and it's crawling with rock types that want to kill us. Perfect for you, Ash. The ascent was a nightmare. The air grew hotter with every step. The ground shook rhythmically, the heartbeat of the agitated magma. They moved in a diamond formation. Ash took point, Pikachu acting as a radar. Misty took the rear, her water aura creating a mist shield that filtered the worst of the toxic gas. Serena took the center, her psychic empathy soothing the wild Pokémon before they could attack, allowing the group to pass without unnecessary battles. May moved alongside Ash. She watched him. She had traveled with him when he was a scrappy kid who forgot to eat. The man climbing next to her was different. He moved with an economy of motion that was terrifying. When a boulder dislodged from the cliff face, Ash didn't dodge. He caught it with one hand, his aura flaring briefly, and set it aside. You've changed, May muttered as they huddled under an overhang to avoid a patrol of Order drones. We all have, Ash said, checking the charge on Pikachu's cheeks. You're leading the resistance, May. That's not the girl who just wanted to win ribbons. Ribbons don't save lives, May said quietly, staring at the red glow of the summit. When the Order showed up. When they started hurting them. I couldn't just perform. I had to fight. But I'm not strong enough, Ash. I can hold them back, but I can't break them. You don't have to do it alone, Ash said. That's the problem. I want to. I hate waiting for a hero. They reached the Jagged Pass. The Order's blockade was visible, a fortress of prefab steel walls erected across the narrow choke point. Turrets scanned the perimeter. Frontal assault is suicide, Misty whispered. Good thing we aren't doing a frontal assault, Ash said. He unclipped a Pokeball. Sceptile, I choose you. The forest Pokémon materialized. Sceptile looked at the magma, then at Ash, and nodded. He grabbed a twig, stuck it in his mouth, and crouched. May, Ash said, turning to her. I need you to draw their fire. May blinked. Excuse me? You want me to be the bait? No, Ash said, his eyes locking onto hers. I want you to be the hammer. Take the left flank. It's exposed. They won't expect a single trainer to charge an artillery position. But you can do it. Use Blaziken's speed. Break their line. That's insane, Serena gasped. Ash, there are 50 soldiers there. She can do it, Ash said, not looking away from May. I know her style. She fights with rhythm. They can't track that. May stared at him. He wasn't protecting her. He wasn't telling her to stay back with the healers. He was handing her the most dangerous job on the field because he believed she was the only one who could pull it off. A grin spread across May's face. It was sharp and dangerous. All right, Monarch, she said, pulling a Pokeball. If I die, I'm haunting you. Deal. Go. May vaulted over the cover. Blaziken, sky uppercut. Blaziken burst from the ball, a blur of fire and feathers. May didn't issue commands. She moved with him. She sprinted toward the left flank, dodging suppression fire with acrobatic grace. Blaziken deflected energy bolts with kicks of flame. The Order soldiers panicked, turning their turrets toward the crimson blur tearing through their ranks. Now, Ash shouted. Ash, Misty, and Serena launched their attack on the center. Sceptile moved through the rocks like a phantom, Leafblade cutting through the barrels of the Order's rifles. Misty's Starmie unleashed a hydro pump that acted like a battering ram, smashing the gate. Serena's Delphox used Psychic to catch the falling debris and hurl it back at the enemy. But the real battle was on the left. May was a whirlwind. She was directing Blaziken with the precision of a contest routine weaponized for war. Every spin dodged a laser, every landing crushed a generator. Blaze kick. Spin. Flamethrower. She was laughing. Amidst the explosions and the heat, she was in her element. She wasn't just fighting, she was dancing with destruction. They breached the perimeter and reached the central platform. A massive drill was bored into the crater floor, pulsating with dark energy. Standing atop it was a lieutenant of the Order. A woman in heavy exoskeletal armor wielding dual energy blades. "You're too late," the lieutenant screamed. "The cycle is primed. The eruption cannot be stopped." She slammed her fist onto the console. The drill whirred to a deafening pitch. The ground cracked. Lava began to bubble up through the fissures. "Ash!" Misty yelled, creating a water dome to shield them from the heat. "It's going to blow." Ash looked at the machine, then at May, who had just finished roundhouse kicking a soldier off the platform. She was panting, her skin flushed, her eyes burning with adrenaline. "May!" Ash shouted over the roar. "I need your fire." "My what?" "The machine is disrupting the Earth's aura. We have to overload it with raw biological energy. We have to burn out the jamming signal." Ash extended his hand. May didn't hesitate. She knew what this was. She had seen the way Misty and Serena moved. She knew the cost. "Let's burn it down," May yelled, sprinting across the metal grating. She slammed her hand into Ash's, the third bond. If Misty was the ocean and Serena was the hearth, May was the volcano itself. The moment their skin touched, Ash felt a surge of energy so violent it nearly knocked him over. It was raw passion. It was the drive to be better, to move faster, to never stop. It was the heat of 1,000 suns condensed into a human soul. Ash's aura flared, turning a deep, violent crimson. "Roar!" Ash and May shouted in unison. They didn't attack the lieutenant, they attacked the magma. They channeled the power of the Covenant directly into the earth. The crimson aura slammed into the rising lava, not to cool it, but to control it. They synchronized with the volatility of the planet. The drill screamed as the energy feedback hit it. The dark metal turned red, then white. "Blaziken! Overheat!" May commanded, her voice echoing with Ash's power. Blaziken, fueled by the infinite energy of the bond, unleashed a blast of white fire that vaporized the drill instantly. The machine disintegrated. The lieutenant was thrown back by the shockwave, her armor fused by the heat. Ash and May stood amidst the wreckage, hand in hand, surrounded by a swirling vortex of fire and aura. The lava receded, soothed by the overwhelming dominance of their combined will. The shaking stopped. The sky above began to clear, the dark ash burned away by the sheer intensity of their power. Ash squeezed May's hand. He felt her exhaustion, but also her exhilaration. "You okay?" he asked, the crimson glow fading slowly. May looked at him. Her hair was a mess, her clothes were singed, and she had never looked more alive. That, May breathed, squeezing his hand back, was better than a grand festival. She didn't pull away. The bond settled into a hum, a constant, rhythmic thrumming in the back of Ash's mind, like a second heartbeat. Serena and Misty climbed up to the platform. Serena checked the lieutenant, unconscious but alive, while Misty doused the remaining fires. "Show-offs," Misty grinned, though she looked relieved. "Hoenn is secure," Ash announced, his voice carrying the authority of the monarch. He looked at the smoking crater, then at his three companions. Water. Grace. Fire. He was stronger. The hollowness inside him was half filled, but as the adrenaline faded, a new sensation hit him, a chill. A cold wind blew across the heated rocks, carrying the scent of ozone and ancient anger. Ash stiffened. He looked north, toward the Unova region. "What is it?" Serena asked, sensing his mood shift instantly through their bond. "Dragon," Ash whispered. "A lot of them, and they're angry." May wiped the soot from her forehead. "Iris, she knows," Ash said. She felt the power shift. And she's not happy about it. Iris hates being told what to do, Misty noted, if she thinks you're collecting us like badges. She'll try to fight me, Ash finished. And Vayne will be waiting to exploit that. He turned to the group. We go to Unova, but this won't be a rescue mission, it's going to be a duel. May cracked her knuckles, the lingering energy of the Covenant sparking around her fingers. Good. I was just getting warmed up. Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. The Dragon's Verdict. The Village of Dragons was not a village. It was a fortress woven from the roots of ancient trees and guarded by the fierce, proud presence of its inhabitants. It radiated a heavy, primal energy, thick with the power of dragon-type Pokémon that brooked no challenge. Ash felt the collective gaze of 100 angry eyes on him the moment he stepped off the landing pad. The political turmoil and the 3 aura bonds he carried, water, grace, fire, made his energy signature a burning beacon of chaos in this place of quiet, ancient strength. Misty, Serena, and May stood behind him, forming a quartet of radiating power. They were ready for a fight, but this wasn't the Order of Silence. This was family drama on a cosmic scale. Iris was waiting for them in the main clearing. She wore the regal garb of the Unova champion, a deep purple cloak draped over her usual clothes, the scale insignia prominent on her shoulder. She had Haxorus by her side, the dragon Pokemon's tusks gleaming menacingly. Iris's hair was longer, heavier, and her dark eyes carried the heavy weight of leadership and suspicion. I felt the shift in Hoenn, Ash, Iris said, her voice sharp, cutting through the silence. The Monarch's new power. It felt like a net being thrown across the world. Iris, Ash said, walking forward alone. It's the Apex Covenant. The world is coming apart. I'm trying to hold it together. By binding your friends? Iris crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. You were always too quick to trust fate, Ash. Now you're claiming divine right and collecting champions like trophies. It's not about trophies, Iris. It's about survival. Vayne is using dissonance tech to weaponize the planet's instability. He almost killed Professor Oak. He tried to start an eruption in Hoenn. And that justifies the end of free will. Iris scoffed, gesturing to the 3 women behind him. Misty, May, Serena. Look at you. You glow with his power. Are you pillars, or are you anchors on a chain? Misty stepped forward, her hands clenched. We chose this, Iris. It's not a leash, it's a shield. A shield that protects his life, Iris countered. I am the champion of Unova. My duty is to the wildness, to the freedom of the dragon soul. I will not trade that for your god's prophecy. Iris pointed at Ash, the gesture commanding. You want my power? You want me to anchor your fate? Then you fight for it, Ash. You fight for the right to ask for my freedom. If you win this duel, I will listen. If you lose, you dismantle the Covenant and you stop playing God. Ash looked at the resolute fire in her eyes. He knew arguing would be useless. She didn't trust words. She trusted strength, conviction, and honest combat. Deal, Ash said, reaching for a ball. Pikachu, stand ready. Iris shook her head. No, not Pikachu. Not your proxy. I want to see the Monarch fight. I want to see your strongest. Haxorus is your champion, Ash countered. I'll match it. Ash unclipped a ball from his belt. A heavy, scuffed one he rarely used first. Charizard, I choose you. The massive flame Pokémon materialized in a pillar of heat and roaring fire, instantly pushing back the cool, damp dragon aura of the village. Charizard glared at Haxorus, his teeth bared in challenge. Iris looked satisfied. Good. Charizard against Haxorus. Let's see what 4 years of being a monarch has taught you. The duel began. It was a clash of titans. Haxorus was pure, devastating strength, wielding Dragon Claw with surgical precision. Charizard met the blows with Thunder Punch and Fire Blast. Ash fought defensively. He directed Charizard to dodge, to deflect, to keep his attacks focused on disarming Haxorus, not defeating him. He wanted to preserve Charizard's energy, but more importantly, he didn't want to injure Iris's champion. He was trying to show her his power had constraint, that he hadn't become the tyrant she feared. But the constraint only fueled Iris's anger. Why are you holding back? Iris screamed, her voice echoing the challenge. Fight me, Ash. Stop treating this like a spar. If you are going to rule the world, you fight like the world depends on it. He's trying to show respect, Iris, May shouted from the sidelines. Respect is fighting with everything you have. Iris pushed Haxorus to an extreme outrage. The dragon lost control, its movements becoming chaotic but terrifyingly fast. Ash sighed, seeing the rising fury in his friend's face. He was losing the argument through gentleness. Then, the world changed. A grinding, unnatural sound tore through the village of dragons. It was the sound of metal tearing metal, followed by a roar that was deep, inhuman, and laced with technological static. Ash's skin prickled. This wasn't natural dragon energy, it was vain. Incoming! Serena screamed, pointing to the skies. From the clouds, a monstrous creation descended. It was a dragon, but wrong. It was a Frankenstein of biology and steel, with jagged obsidian scales and multiple mechanized limbs that writhed like tentacles. Its chest was a glowing purple sphere, the dissonance core. The type: Annihilator, Ash snarled. Vane's Chimera. The creature landed outside the duel ring. It didn't engage the pillars. It targeted the Dragon Master. A null field blast erupted from its chest, not targeting the Pokémon, but Iris herself. Iris, move! Ash yelled. Iris, stunned by the interruption, was too slow. The blast hit her, the energy designed to sever her bond to Haxorus. Iris collapsed, clutching her head, the link to her partner sparking with agonizing pain. Haxorus roared in primal fury and charged the Chimera. The type: Annihilator didn't flinch. Its metal claws intercepted Haxorus's tusks, and a null field weave erupted around the dragon Pokémon, trapping it instantly. Haxorus thrashed, unable to generate dragon energy strong enough to break the net. Ash's restraint snapped. The calm monarch vanished. The primal fighter, the one Arceus had anointed, surged to the surface. His eyes turned a harsh, electric blue, fueled by the collective outrage of his three companions. Charizard! Ash's voice was pure command, stripped of all warmth. Overdrive. Burn it. Charizard responded instantly, fueled by the sudden, necessary brutality in Ash's voice. The flame Pokémon erupted in a pillar of white-hot fire that was no longer controlled. It was a destructive furnace. The Chimera turned its attention to Charizard, firing a concentrated beam of null energy. Charizard didn't dodge. Ash pushed his entire physical and psychic strength into the Pokémon. Charizard took the hit, staggered, but the Covenant aura from the four of them formed an elemental barrier that stopped the null field from dissolving his power. Dragon Rage. Maximum power. Charizard roared, a gout of destructive blue fire slamming into the Chimera. The metal plating hissed and melted. The fight was over in 60 seconds of unrelenting, pure aggression. Ash was not fighting to win, he was fighting to destroy. He moved Charizard with the speed and precision of a machine, exploiting every weakness, pushing past all limits. Finally, Charizard delivered a dragon claw that cleaved through the Chimera's dissonance core. The purple sphere imploded in a shower of sparks and black smoke. The Chimera collapsed, a heap of dead metal and scorched flesh. Silence fell over the village of dragons. The duel was forgotten. Ash walked over to the wreckage. He didn't look triumphant, he looked cold. He didn't recall Charizard. He let the powerful Pokémon stand guard, steam rising from its wings. Misty and May were tending to Iris, who was stirring but disoriented. Ash walked past them, stopping directly over the smoking remains of the null field weave that held Haxorus. He looked at Iris. "You wanted to know why I held back?" Ash asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Because that is what I fight. That is the true threat. I fight the kind of violence that kills the bond, not just the body." He pointed at the Chimera. "Vane knew you were challenging me. He sent that thing to sever your partnership, to leave you stranded, to create chaos. He is not fighting the League, Iris. He is fighting existence itself." Iris pushed herself up, her eyes wide as she looked from the Chimera to Ash, then to Haxorus, who was struggling desperately against the broken null weave. "You fought with hatred," she whispered, her voice raw. "I fought with necessity," Ash countered. He knelt beside the weeping Haxorus, placed his hand on the null weave, and pushed his aura into the trap. The Covenant energy, fueled by the four bonds, met the technological static. It didn't explode. It purified. The black lattice of the null weave dissolved into dust. Haxorus, free, lumbered over to Iris and nuzzled her fiercely. Iris didn't look at Haxorus. She looked at Ash. She saw the terrifying competency, the potential for ruthlessness, and the clear distinction between his personal desire and his global duty. "You are dangerous, Ash," she said finally, pushing herself to her feet. "You will destroy yourself with that power if no one keeps you honest." "Then keep me honest," Ash said, standing up. "Be the anchor, Iris. Be the wildness that refuses to be tamed. Join the covenant to keep my ego in check." Iris walked up to him. She didn't offer her hand softly. She grabbed his wrist in a firm, powerful grip, the calluses of a dragon master digging into his skin. "Fine," Iris growled, her eyes locking with his. "I am your pillar of wildness. But if you become a tyrant, I will be the first one to take the throne from you." Ash smiled, a tired but genuine expression. "I wouldn't have it any other way." The fourth bond. The connection slammed into Ash's consciousness like a thunderstorm. It was raw, unbridled, and pure. The energy of the forest, the power of ancient bloodlines. Iris's contribution was the untamed, the refusal to submit. It grounded his collective power in the earth itself. The five of them stood together, water, grace, fire, and wildness, humming with a collective, undeniable force. The order of silence had failed again, but they learned. "Where did Vayne get that thing?" Iris demanded, letting go of Ash. The new bond settled into a fiercely competitive warmth. "He's manufacturing legendary-level threats," Ash said, looking at the broken chimera. "He's running a factory. And the only place in the world with the resources to hide a factory of that scale is Galar." He looked at his companions. "We go to Kalos first," Ash decided. "We need to stabilize that region, or the political fallout from the Indigo Plateau incident will crush us. Serena, prepare the jump. We're going home." Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. The Kalos Grace Lumios city was an architectural marvel of polished steel and luminous glass, but it felt hollow. The Champions Party had landed their heavy transport craft at a discreet military base outside the city. Ash looked at the cityscape, not with the wonder of a tourist, but with the weary eyes of a general. The air felt brittle, charged with suspicion. "The Kalos Council is barely holding the line," Serena explained, reviewing the security briefs in the armored vehicle taking them to the city center. Her diplomatic guise was back, cool, composed, and utterly professional. "The poison attempt at the Indigo Plateau convinced them that you, Ash, are the center of a global war. They want stability. The Covenant is not stability." "It's the only stability there is," Ash countered, his gaze sweeping the rooftops. His four pillars were positioned around him in the vehicle. Misty and May sat across, their energy humming with impatience. Iris sat closest to the door, ready to deploy. "Then you have to show them that," Serena said, pulling a delicate shawl around her shoulders. "I arranged a final event. A charity exhibition in the Grand Festival Hall tonight. It's high profile, televised across the continent. I need to demonstrate that the bond doesn't compromise my art, it enhances it. And you, Monarch, have to be the living proof that this covenant is a partnership, not a hostile takeover." "It's a huge risk," Misty said flatly. "If Vayne attacks a civilian event on live global broadcast, the political fallout will be disastrous." "That's the point," Serena replied, her voice steady. "Vayne attacks chaos. We create absolute harmony. We force the world to choose which is more powerful." Ash reached out and briefly touched Serena's hand. The warmth of their shared rose-gold aura was instantly calming. "I'll be on the stage. I won't let them touch you." Serena looked at him, her vulnerability exposed only for a second. "You need to do more than protect me, Ash. You need to validate me. You need to show them that this bond is worth the price of my career." The Grand Festival Hall was a monument to beauty and spectacle. Ash, in the high-backed private box reserved for diplomatic personnel, felt deeply out of place. The air was thick with the perfumes, the velvet curtains, and the expectant hush of the high society crowd. Serena was backstage, preparing. Misty, dressed in a sleek silver suit, stood at the box's edge, scanning the exits. May was talking strategy with Iris, reviewing contingency plans for evacuation. "She's nervous," May murmured, sensing the tension from the stage manager's headset. "Of course she is," Iris scoffed. "She's putting her life's work on the line for his destiny. That takes guts." "It takes love," Misty said quietly, her eyes focused on Ash, and Ash knows it. Ash was looking down at the stage, not at the crowd. He was pushing his aura out gently, creating a subtle perimeter of calm over the vast hall. It was a tedious, draining task, but he was holding the peace. The lights dimmed. The music swelled. Serena took the stage. Her performance was flawless. She used Sylveon and Braixen, weaving a tapestry of fire and silk. The complexity of the moves was enhanced by the Covenant. Ash could feel the flow of her energy, precise, radiant, turning the stage into a living canvas. The rose-gold light that shimmered around her wasn't showmanship, it was raw aura, controlled perfectly by her artistic will. The audience was captivated. The cameras zoomed in on her smile, her grace, the sheer dedication in her movement. But as the performance reached its climax, a beautiful synergy between Sylveon's ribbons and Braixen's flame, the feeling of peace was ripped away. It was silent. There were no explosions, no guns. The lights in the hall suddenly turned harsh, flickering rapidly between white and black. The beautiful music dissolved into a jarring, high-pitched static. Ash shot up, recognizing the signature immediately, Vayne. This wasn't a physical attack, it was a psychic assault. They're using mass dissonance projection. Serena's voice was relayed from the backstage mic, sharp with panic. I can't concentrate. The audience. They're panicking. In the hall, the applause turned into screams. People weren't just scared. They were overwhelmed by sudden, irrational hatred and paranoia. A man shouted accusations at his neighbor. A woman burst into tears, believing the ceiling was about to collapse. The order of silence was weaponizing collective fear. Ash looked at his pillars. Misty, stabilize the perimeter. Iris, May, hold the exits. We are not leaving this hall. Ash, get to safety, Misty ordered, her face grim. Ash ignored her. He didn't need to fight this with violence, he needed to fight it with truth. He leapt from the box, vaulting over the railing. He landed silently on the stage, the crowd's hysteria washing over him like a toxic wave. Serena was struggling. She was trying to maintain the performance, but the psychic noise was deafening her. Sylveon was snarling, Braixen's flames flickering in confusion. Ash! Serena cried out, relieved and terrified. He rushed to her side. He didn't pull her off the stage. He stood beside her and grabbed the microphone from the stand. Listen to me, Ash roared, but his voice was swallowed by the static. He slammed the microphone down. He grabbed Serena's hand, the way he had done on the political stage at the Indigo Plateau, but this time, it was different. This time, it was a declaration. Ash closed his eyes, drawing deeply on the 4 established bonds. Water, grace, fire, wildness. He pulled them all together and focused the resulting energy into one, unwavering signal. Trust. A 5th aura surged from them, an incandescent white light that wasn't a flare or a burst, but a gentle, radiating warmth. The light engulfed the stage. It washed over the cameras, the static, the screaming audience. It didn't fight the fear, it simply replaced it. Ash locked eyes with Serena. You are not alone, he projected, his thought echoing in her mind through the strength of their bond. You are my pillar. You are my partner. He didn't just stand beside her, he intertwined himself with her performance. Serena understood. She took a deep breath and started to move again. With Ash providing the calming anchor, Serena took the chaotic, terrifying static and turned it into her theme. Sylveon's ribbons danced, pulling the energy inward, weaving the hysteria into a beautiful, controlled pattern of light. Braixen's flame burned steady, purifying the psychic noise. Ash stood with her, his presence a wall of unwavering certainty. He demonstrated to the world that his power was not for destruction, but for protection and harmony. The audience stopped screaming. They didn't start cheering immediately. They watched in stunned silence as the two of them finished the performance. A man of war standing beside a woman of grace, their combined power creating an impenetrable sphere of light and art. When the final chord hit, the whole audience, including the dignitaries who had been moments from a violent panic attack, rose to their feet in a roar of applause that was deafeningly, genuinely emotional. The fear was gone. The Covenant had won the court of public opinion. Ash and Serena bowed together, the gentle white aura settling around them like mist. Backstage, the political opposition was decimated. The Order's agents, who had been broadcasting the dissonance, were found convulsing, their equipment destroyed by the feedback of the raw, purified aura. Later, in the quiet of the empty hall, Ash sat with Serena, holding her close. Misty, May, and Iris were busy coordinating the sweep of the area. You risked everything, Ash murmured, kissing her forehead. I know, Serena whispered, leaning into his strength. But when you jumped onto the stage, when you took my hand in front of the world, I knew the risk didn't matter. It was worth it. To be seen, Ash. To be seen as yours. You are more than mine, Serena, Ash said. You are my equal. My pillar of grace. You saved the political front today. You showed them that the monarch isn't a tyrant, he's a partner. The door to their dressing room opened. Chloe Cerise stood there. She wasn't one of the pillars, but a close friend and renowned researcher. She looked pale and shaken, holding a data drive. Ash, Chloe said, her voice tight. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I followed the signal of the dissonance device they used. I traced the energy signature. Where is Vane manufacturing these things? Ash asked, his posture instantly straightening. It's not Galar, Chloe whispered, her eyes wide with fear. It's coming from something ancient. Something deep beneath the ocean, off the coast of Alola. She held up the data drive. They're using Ultra Beast energy, and they're not just building machines. They're trying to breach the dimensions. Ash stood up. The relaxed moment was over. The game had just escalated from political warfare to cosmic trespass. Alola, Ash said, the name tasting of salt and danger. Lily is there, and the Ultra Guardians. We need to warn them, Iris said, stepping into the room, Charizard's Pokeball already in her hand. Before Vane opens a door he can't close. Ash looked at his four pillars, Misty, Serena, May, and Iris. Then at Chloe, the critical link between science and their magical reality. They were strong, but they were still outnumbered, fighting a ghost in the machine. Chloe, you're coming with us, Ash ordered. We need your brain. Pack what you need. We move at dawn. If they're using Ultra Beast energy, this isn't about power anymore. This is about the integrity of the soul. Chapter 5 and Chapter 6. The ether schism. The Alolan sea breeze was a deceptive lie. Ash felt the salt air on his face, but underneath the natural currents, the aura was thick with static and unnatural psychic noise. The Manta Ray, the customized League submersible, breached the surface near Ether Paradise. The massive, artificial island complex was dark. Completely silent. It looked like a derelict sci-fi ghost ship floating in the placid blue. The facility is in full lockdown, Chloe whispered, her eyes glued to a holographic map of the Ether Foundation. Her hands moved over the display with nervous precision. Vane's signature is all over this. He's rerouted all power to the subterranean Ultra Beast research nexus. Lily is down there. Is she answering? Ash asked, strapping on a reinforced harness. No, but her last distress call was 3 hours ago. She said they were activating the dimensional anchor without stabilization protocols. They're trying to brute force a wormhole open. They're going to flood Alola with chaos, Iris muttered, checking the deployment of Haxorus's armor plating. We need to hit the nexus directly and shut down the anchor. We can't go in loud, Misty cautioned, securing a utility pack. This is Lily's home. If we blow the place up, we might lose her and the research that protects Alola. Then we go quiet, Ash said, looking at the four women. The 5 bonds, the collective mental network, was their greatest stealth tool. Pikachu will run interference on the external sensors. Chloe, you're our eyes. Use the old ventilation schematics to guide us. Everyone, close the circle. They placed their hands on Ash's shoulders and back, synchronizing their auras. Ash projected a shield of silence, muffling their psychic signatures. They moved like ghosts, diving into the dark, cold ocean. Ether Paradise was a warren of polished metal and echoing silence. The only illumination came from the faint red emergency lights that pulsed through the corridors, giving the place an unsettling, bloody glow. Chloe guided them through maintenance tunnels, the smell of recycled air and ozone sharp in their rebreathers. Null-tech dampeners are everywhere, Chloe whispered through the comms link. Ash was running through the aura network. Pokémon moves will be sluggish, maybe 1/3 power. We have to rely on physical force. We prefer physical force, May whispered back, checking the tension in her Blaziken's leg joints. They breached the main research hub. It was chaos. Tables were overturned, papers scattered, and the only humans they saw were unconscious scientists wearing the uniform of the Ether Foundation. Then they found her. Lily was standing alone in the center of the largest biolab, illuminated by the sickly purple glow of a massive, swirling portal at the far end of the chamber. She wore heavy-duty armor, not designed for fighting, but for containment. She was pale, resolute, and guarding a main console with a fierce determination. Lily. Ash projected mentally. She spun around, startled. Relief flooded her expression, but it was quickly replaced by urgency. Ash. Thank the stars. You have to stop them. They're overloading the anchor. They want to pull the entire Necrozma energy signature through. Behind her, 2 Order of Silence lieutenants, wearing specialized, high aura-resistant power suits, were working frantically on a console designed to channel the chaos. The breach is already too wide, one of the lieutenants shouted. The Ultra Beasts are crossing. The swirling portal screamed. A jagged tear appeared in the fabric of reality, and 3 massive, insectoid forms, Buzzwole, Pheromosa, and a dozen writhing Nihilego, poured through the wormhole. They weren't aggressive yet. They were disoriented and radiating pure, terrifying chaos. Defense positions, Ash roared, snapping into action. The battle was immediately brutal and disorienting. The null tech made their Pokémon sluggish, but the sheer numbers of the Ultra Beasts made them overwhelming. Iris and Haxorus engaged Pheromosa, trying to match the beast's impossible speed, using raw strength where dragon energy failed. May and Blaziken took on Buzzwole, trading devastating physical blows with the muscular beast, relying on the Covenant's fire aura to burn through the dampening field. Misty and Serena moved to protect Lily and the console. Misty created a barrier of focused water around the core, using her water aura to compensate for Starmie's sluggishness. Serena used Sylveon to project gentle, calming emotion, trying to minimize the beast's panic and redirect their attacks away from the pillars. Ash fought his way toward Lily, Charizard unleashing torrents of controlled fire to keep the null suit soldiers off them. Lily, the console. What's the protocol? Ash shouted, taking down a soldier with a well-aimed aura punch. The failsafe is a full system purge, but it will permanently lock out dimensional travel. Lily yelled back, her fingers flying over the keypad. They installed a hard override. I can't reach the main terminal. Where is it? Inside the portal's projection range. You have to physically disable the stabilizer. The situation was spiraling. The Nihilego forms were attaching themselves to the unconscious scientists, radiating dissonance. The psychic chaos was infecting the pillars' connection, making their synchronized thoughts jagged and painful. We're losing the sync, May screamed, dodging a Buzzwole slam that cracked the floor. Ash looked at the massive, violently swirling wormhole. The portal itself was a physical presence, radiating cold void energy. And the air was thick with the scent of a coming god. Lily, Ash said, moving to her side, shielding her from a stray Nihilego blast. If I go in there, I need an anchor. You are the only one who knows the core frequency. Lily looked up at him. She didn't hesitate, she was done being afraid. I'm ready, Ash, she said, her voice clear. Ash reached out and took her hand. It was soft, cold, and entirely steady. The 5th bond. This connection was different from the others. It wasn't kinetic fire, or political grace, or competitive challenge. Lily's aura was crystal clear and agonizingly compassionate. When the bond locked, Ash felt the true burden of the world. He felt the pain of the captured Ultra Beasts, the sorrow of the scientists, the deep, ethical love Lily harbored for every creature. She was his soul. His sanctuary. The voice that would always tell him when he was going too far. The 5 synchronized auras, water, grace, fire, wildness, and now soul, fused into a white light so pure it physically pushed back the purple dissonance. Ash turned toward the ultra wormhole. The sheer, overwhelming power of the 5 pillars was now centered in his being. He did not call a Pokémon. He called the Alpha. He stepped to the edge of the portal, his coat billowing in the chaotic vacuum. Ash raised his hand to the ultra wormhole, and projected a thought so loud, so primal, it was felt across dimensions. Silence. Stop. It was a command not of aggression, but of ultimate, undeniable authority. He projected the calm, compassionate will of Lily, amplified by the fierce protection of the 4 pillars. The Ultra Beasts froze. Buzzwole lowered its fists. Pheromosa stopped mid-stride. The swirling portal hesitated. Ash projected one final, absolute order: return to your home. He didn't just command the beasts. He commanded the dimensions. The wormhole began to shrink, its edges closing rapidly as the raw power of the Covenant enforced stability. The Nihilego were sucked back into the void. One of the null-suit lieutenants finally recovered from the psychic blast and dove for the console, attempting to stabilize the anchor. Iris. Now. Ash roared. Iris and Haxorus, fueled by the bond of wildness, moved with impossible speed. Haxorus cleaved the lieutenant's armor, and Iris, using the raw, untamed energy of the Covenant, smashed the console with a heavy, deliberate punch. Sparks flew. The system exploded. The wormhole snapped shut, leaving nothing but a lingering scent of ozone in the silent, cold reality of the lab. The battle was over. The Order of Silence agents were either captured or fled through emergency tunnels. Lily slumped against the console, exhausted, but fundamentally intact. Ash walked back to her side. He was breathing heavily, the drain of overriding dimensional physics profound. "You closed it," Lily whispered, looking at him with awe. "You didn't fight them, Ash. You ordered them." "Your energy did that," Ash said, reaching out to stroke her hair gently. "You're the compass, Lily. You showed me the true way to use this power." "And you showed me how to be brave," she replied. She reached up and placed a hand against his cheek, a moment of profound, quiet tenderness in the smoking lab. "I accept the Covenant, Ash," Lily said, her voice steady. "I will be the pillar of soul. I will keep your heart human." He leaned in, resting his forehead against hers, accepting the profound weight of her promise. Misty, Serena, May, and Iris gathered around them, their own bonds sinking to the newest member. The six of them were now a formidable council. Chloe, meanwhile, was back at the destroyed console, retrieving what she could from the melted drives. "Ash. I found it," Chloe called out, holding up a small, fused chip. The data log of the core facility. Vane wasn't just pulling Ultra Beasts through. He was studying their reality-warping energy to find a way to control the ultimate destructive power. "What power?" May asked, wiping soot from her blaziken. Chloe's expression was grim. "The ultimate dissonance. The primal force of Dynamax. He's headed to Galar." Ash straightened up. "Eternatus," he murmured, recognizing the endgame. "Vane wants to destroy the world's stability by weaponizing its chaotic growth." Iris stepped forward, her eyes burning with challenge. "Galar is a military state. It's crawling with champions. If Vane can hide a lab there, it'll be a fortress." Ash looked at the collective resolve of his 5 pillars. They were strong, but they needed the last piece of the puzzle. They needed a link to the Galar region, someone who understood the core of their culture and their power. "We need a warrior," Ash said. "A link to the League, and a master of Dynamax." "I know just the person," Chloe murmured, looking at the chip. "She's not a former companion, Ash. She's a rival. A master of pure, focused combat." "Then we go to Galar," Ash ordered, "and we recruit the last pillar." Chapter 6 and Chapter 7. The Diamond Heart. The cold bit at their faces as the airship descended into the Sinnoh region. The sky above Snowpoint City was a perpetual twilight, heavy with unseasonal snow and a strange, buzzing static. "The Dynamax energy is bleeding through the dimension," Chloe explained, hunched over her console in the transport bay. "It's not just Galar. The dissonance is warping the magnetic field, pulling chaotic energy from the neighboring regions. It's affecting the contests," Misty observed, her breath misting. "The reports are coming in. Pokémon losing control, performances turning into riots." "Dawn won't run from a riot," Ash said, strapping on his heaviest winter gear. He looked at his 5 pillars. Misty, Serena, May, Iris, and Lily. Who were bundled up but radiating confidence. She'll try to tame it. Dawn was the 6th pillar, the embodiment of willpower. Ash knew she wouldn't accept destiny. She would accept duty, but only if he could prove that his cause was worth her dedication. They found Dawn in the center of the Snowpoint Contest Hall, which was currently serving as an emergency stabilization center. She wasn't performing. She was directing. She wore a thick coat over her performing attire, a scarf wrapped tightly around her neck. Her expression was fiercely focused. Her Piplup and Pachirisu were working with local coordinators, using their combined contest experience to soothe the Pokémon whose energy was spiking with chaotic Dynamax static. When she saw Ash, she didn't rush him. She finished directing a Nurse Joy team to a volatile Ambipom, secured the perimeter, and then walked over. "You're late, Monarch," Dawn said, her tone professional and icy. "I've been tracking your movements. Collecting your champions. I expected a call before you rolled into my region with your entire armed guard." "We're not an armed guard, Dawn," Ash said simply. "We're a unified front." Dawn looked at Serena, then at May, and finally at Misty. Her eyes lingered on the faint, visible aura around them. "You look powerful," Dawn admitted. "But power changes people, Ash. It makes them complacent. I've been fighting this dissonance for a week, not with some divine covenant, but with sheer, stubborn willpower. I'm not trading my conviction for your safety blanket." "It's not a blanket," Ash countered. "It's a foundation. And your conviction is exactly what we need, Dawn. The enemy is trying to weaponize chaos, and you are a master of turning chaos into art." "Then I challenge you," Dawn said, matching his intensity. "If you are truly the apex, you don't need a cult of personality. You need discipline. A double battle. You and one of your pillars against me and my partners. If I win, you leave Sinnoh and stop dragging your friends into your destiny." "Pikachu and I accept," Ash said immediately. "Misty, you're up." The battle was held in a segregated, reinforced corner of the contest hall, shrouded by a thick anti-dissonance barrier supplied by Chloe. Dawn chose Piplup and Pachirisu, her original, most reliable partners. Ash and Misty chose Pikachu and Starmie. The fight wasn't just about strength, it was about synchronization. Dawn was an absolute marvel. She channeled her immense willpower into her Pokémon, turning every attack into a beautifully orchestrated counter. Piplup's Bubble Beam and Pachirisu's Discharge were perfectly timed to deflect Starmie's attacks while pressuring Pikachu. Ash and Misty fought as a perfect unit. The water and electric moves meshed, their aura humming in perfect harmony. But Dawn's tactical coordination was legendary. She kept anticipating their synchronized movements. "She's fighting our bond," Misty muttered, blocking a swift counterattack. "She's testing our resolve," Ash replied. Dawn was pushing them, demanding perfection. She forced Ash to stop relying on the brute force of the Covenant and remember the skill that got him the title. The battle raged, neither side yielding, until the ground beneath the hall began to shudder violently. The barrier Chloe had erected around them flickered, overloaded by a massive spike of external energy. "It's not just leakage," Chloe screamed over the comms. "The Order of Silence has activated a primary dissonance core in the Galar Wild area. The overflow is hitting Sinnoh, aiming to destabilize the entire Eastern Hemisphere." The ceiling lights exploded. A wave of chaotic, destabilized Dynamax energy slammed into the contest hall. Piplup and Pachirisu screamed, clutching their heads, their energy spiking dangerously. Starmie spun out of control, its core light flickering wildly. "They're attacking the bonds," Dawn realized, rushing to her partners. "They're trying to sever the connection with the chaos." "We have to stabilize it," Ash yelled. "This isn't a battle, it's a purification." Ash looked at Dawn. She was focused entirely on protecting her Pokémon, using her body as a physical shield against the chaotic energy. "Dawn," Ash shouted. "We have to combine. Let the Covenant absorb the chaos." "I won't trade my freedom," Dawn screamed back, tears of frustration mixing with the smoke. "It's not trade, it's survival." Ash launched himself across the floor, sliding through the debris toward her. Let me show you what real willpower is." He reached out his hand, ignoring the searing pain of the unstable dissonance. Dawn hesitated for only a fraction of a second. She saw the desperation in his eyes, not for himself, but for the entire hall of suffering Pokémon. She saw the absolute focus of the monarch. She slammed her hand into his. The sixth bond. The connection was cold at first, like steel forged in ice, but then it erupted in a dazzling explosion of diamond dust. Dawn's aura was pure, unyielding resolve. It was the absolute, unshakable confidence that turns dreams into reality. It was the willpower that forces the world to bend. Ash absorbed it, and the total six-fold covenant slammed into place. Water, grace, fire, wildness, soul, and now willpower. The synchronized energy erupted in a column of iridescent light, shimmering with every color of the spectrum. The chaos of the Dynamax energy hit the shield and was not repelled, but absorbed and purified. Ash and Dawn stood together, radiating the overwhelming power of stability. "Pachirisu. Discharge," Dawn commanded, her voice steady. Pachirisu, fueled by the stable, pure aura, unleashed a concentrated beam of electricity that was no longer chaotic, but medicinal. It hit the dissonance core in the ceiling, neutralizing the unstable energy. The dissonance spike vanished. The hall fell silent, the Pokémon calming instantly. Dawn looked at Ash, her breathing ragged, her eyes wide with the sheer magnitude of the power she now carried. "You used me," Dawn said, not in accusation, but in awe. "We used each other," Ash corrected, releasing her hand. He felt completely whole. The 6 pillars were in place. The covenant was complete. The emptiness Arceus had warned of was gone, replaced by 6 distinct, powerful voices in his head, arguing, supporting, and centering him. Misty and the others rushed over. 6 down, Misty breathed, looking at Dawn with new respect. "And Vayne just made his move," Iris stated, pointing to Chloe's console, which was now flickering with urgent telemetry. "He was testing our limit," Chloe explained, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "He activated the dissonance core in Galar to see if we could counter. We did. But he's running a massive power drain from the Galar wild area. He's found the source of the Dynamax energy." "Eternatus," Ash stated flatly. "He's not just using the energy," Chloe corrected, horrified. "He's trying to capture the being itself, at the core of the power plant in Hammerlock. He's trying to force Eternatus into a perpetual Gigantamax state to tear a permanent hole in the planet's atmosphere." "If he succeeds," Lily whispered, clutching her chest, "the dimensional barrier will collapse permanently. The world will be consumed by chaos." Ash looked at the collective power around him. His pillars were fully formed. They were ready. "This is it," Ash said, his voice carrying the authority of the monarch and the combined will of his 6 companions. "Final destination. Galar. Hammerlock. We end this war." Chapter 7 and Chapter 8. The Betrayal at Hammerlock. The final destination was Hammerlock, the industrial heart of Galar. The air was thick with smoke, but beneath the pollution, Ash could feel the violent, chaotic pulse of Dynamax energy. The city was built around the massive, cylindrical power plant that housed the slumbering form of Eternatus. Ash's 6 pillars, Misty, Serena, May, Iris, Lily, and Dawn, moved with the silent, absolute synchronization of a veteran military unit. Their collective aura, the Apex Covenant, was a humming shield against the Galar dissonance. Chloe, the 7th mind in their comms network, guided them from their concealed airship high above the wild area, tracking Vayne's energy signatures. "Vayne has secured the main reactor core," Chloe whispered through the mental link. "He's using the captured Ultra Beast energy from Alola to force the reactor into a critical state. He's not just using the energy. He's trying to wake Eternatus and bind it to a null weave." "We move," Ash commanded. "Iris, May, you 2 create the main diversion. Hit the external defense line with maximum force. We need to split their military core." "Done," Iris snapped, relishing the chance for raw combat. May nodded, her expression grim but eager. Misty and Dawn took the perimeter flank, using water and ice to exploit the thermal weaknesses of the power plant's cooling systems, creating a diversionary steam cloud. "Lily, Serena, you're with me," Ash continued. "Lily, I need your soul aura to stabilize the internal Dynamax fluctuations as we move. Serena, use the grace to manage the collateral damage. We can't have the city panic." They entered the Hammerlock power plant through a forgotten service tunnel, the stench of ozone and scorched metal overwhelming. The interior was a nightmare of spiraling walkways and pulsing machinery. The air shimmered with unstable Gigantamax power. The walls were lined with Order of Silence soldiers, armed not with rifles, but with heavy null field projectors designed to contain a legendary. Ash fought without reserve. He commanded the Covenant, his 6 partners fighting with the precision of a single being. When a null field blasted toward Lily, Misty's water aura instantly encased her in a protective sphere. When a platoon tried to flank them, Dawn's Piplup and Pachirisu unleashed a coordinated, non-lethal electrical attack that paralyzed the entire line. Ash engaged the lead lieutenant in a hand-to-hand fight, using pure aura projection to shatter the soldier's armor. He was unstoppable. His power was absolute. They reached the top level. The core chamber. The room was vast and dominated by a huge cylindrical energy cage. Inside, the massive, skeletal form of Eternatus was visible, thrashing in a terrifying, sluggish rage, struggling against a high-tech energy collar. And standing before the cage, wearing an anti-aura suit that made him look like a phantom, was Director Silas Vane. "Monarch Ketchum," Vane said, his voice amplified, dripping with contempt. "Punctual, as always. You should have stayed on your little globe-trotting vacation. You are already too late." Vane raised a remote. "I have achieved what your feeble league could only dream of, complete control over the darkest day." "You don't control it," Ash spat, standing his ground. "You're poisoning it. You're tearing reality apart. A necessity. You seek to monopolize power through these pillars. You are building a tyranny under the guise of prophecy. I am here to liberate humanity by eliminating the root of all chaos, the bond between man and monster." Vane gestured toward a control panel. "Your precious little covenant is about to witness the true power of dissonance. Observe." Vane hit the activation button. The cage around Eternatus didn't tighten. Instead, a series of dark energy locks, designed like stylized chains, suddenly erupted from the floor and slammed not toward Ash, but toward the 6 women behind him. Lily, Serena, and the others screamed as the null chains locked around their wrists and necks, instantly locking down their auras. "Ash!" Misty gasped, falling to her knees, the pain of the disruption searing. Ash spun around, horrified. He saw the cold, efficient null cuffs cutting off the flow of the covenant. The 6 unique energies, water, grace, fire, wildness, soul, willpower, were violently severed from his core. The connection was ripped out of him. The power, the warmth, the synchronization, gone. Ash collapsed, clutching his head. The resulting void was agonizing, worse than any physical pain. He was deafened by the sudden silence in his mind. Vane laughed, a cold, genuine sound of triumph. "Did you really think the Apex Covenant was untouchable?" Vane gloated. "I didn't attack your body, Monarch. I attacked your dependency. The null cuffs sever the metaphysical thread. Your power, Ash Ketchum, was never your own. It was borrowed." Vane then targeted the true betrayal. He didn't use a machine. He used a voice. "I also found an informant with excellent access to the core team," Vane purred, looking toward the ceiling. "A bright mind, but one frustrated by the limitations of destiny." Ash looked up, his aura too muted to sense the deception. Chloe's voice crackled over the comms system, which Vane had clearly hijacked. It was cold, devoid of her usual nervousness. "It's true, Ash," Chloe said, the words cutting deeper than any null field. "The data was too tempting. You are too dangerous. A true scientist cannot stand by and watch one man consolidate all the power. Vane's vision ensures autonomy, even if it means destruction." The truth hammered Ash. The betrayal wasn't from a stranger. It was from the one person he had trusted with the logistics of the entire operation. Ash looked up at Vane, his face pale and slack with shock, his immense aura now a flickering candle. "Now, the Monarch is just a man," Vane said, stepping forward. "He didn't use a Pokémon. He used his armored fist, and a man can bleed." Vane slammed his fist into Ash's jaw. The sound echoed through the chamber. Ash, weakened and shattered by the severance, went flying backward, crashing into the metal wall. "This is the liberation," Vane stated, walking toward the fallen Monarch. Ash struggled to rise, but the physical blow combined with the psychic shock was too much. He was weak, he was alone. Vane stood over him, raising his armored boot. "You fail, Monarch. You fail because you rely on fragile human emotion." Vane delivered a savage kick to Ash's ribs. Ash cried out, the pain real, raw, and completely unprotected by his usual aura reserves. The women, his pillars, watched, trapped in the cuffs, unable to move or fight, their auras desperately trying to reach him. "Ash. No." Serena screamed, struggling uselessly against the null chains. Misty, tears streaming down her face, screamed a curse that was swallowed by the chaotic energy of the chamber. Vane delivered kick after kick, precise and brutal, breaking Ash down physically. "The Covenant is broken." Vane shouted to his troops. "The false god is defeated. Activate the Eternatus protocol." The machine whirred to life. The energy cage around Eternatus intensified, the dissonance reaching critical mass. The sky outside the plant began to glow with the terrifying, scarlet light of the darkest day. Vane looked down at Ash, who was spitting blood, his consciousness fading. "I win, Monarch," Vane said, his tone utterly clinical. Ash's vision blurred. He felt the cold reality of defeat. The world was ending, and he was powerless, lying broken on the floor. But then, through the static, through the pain, he heard a voice. Not his own. Not one of the pillars. A small, familiar, electronic chirp. Pikachu, who had been fighting the exterior guards, raced into the core chamber. He saw Ash broken, saw the pillars caged, and saw Eternatus thrashing in pain. Pikachu didn't attack Vayne. Pikachu raced toward the chains that held Misty. He knew where the battle truly lay. Pikachu. No, Vayne yelled, realizing the threat. Pikachu slammed his entire body, charged with every remaining ounce of electricity, into the null cuffs holding Misty. The technological restraint was too strong for him to break, but the gesture, the small, unbonded partner's desperate loyalty, was everything. Vayne ignored the mouse and raised his boot for the killing blow on Ash. But Ash looked at Pikachu, sacrificing himself for the pillars. He looked at Misty, Serena, May, Iris, Lily, and Dawn, caged, but still fighting. And in that moment of ultimate physical and psychic agony, Ash realized the nature of the Covenant. It wasn't about power, it was about will. He didn't need the external connections. He didn't need the pillars to give him their power. He needed them to show him his own. Ash reached deep inside the crippling void in his chest. He reached past the pain, past the betrayal, and found the initial, primal spark of the Aura Monarch that Arceus had recognized. He didn't stand up. He didn't move. He simply reached out his hand and grabbed Vayne's ankle. Vayne looked down, surprised. Ash didn't have the power to lift him, but he had the will to command. Release them, Ash croaked, the words weak but absolute. Vayne chuckled. Pathetic. But Ash pushed one last, frantic pulse of aura, raw, unfettered, and born of utter desperation. Not into Vayne, but into the floor beneath them. The power surge, unrefined and catastrophic, hit the delicate equilibrium of Vayne's Eternatus protocol. The machine shrieked. A massive, blue-hot surge of unstable Dynamax energy shot out, not at Ash, but at Vayne's armor. Vayne screamed as the armor short-circuited. He stumbled backward, releasing Ash's ankle, clutching his head. You idiot! Vayne screamed, his control lost. You've overloaded the system, it's going critical. The entire plant began to shake. Eternatus let out a primal roar as the energy cage dissolved. The legendary Pokémon was free, but destabilized and enraged, ready to unleash the true darkest day upon the world. Ash lay broken, the world fading to black, but he saw his pillars, still caged, and he saw the true, uncontrolled destruction Vayne had wrought. The Covenant was broken, but the war had just begun. Chapter 8 and Chapter 9. The Rise of the Covenant. The silence in Ash's mind was a crippling void, a constant reminder of the 6 lives chained meters away. His body was broken, ribs cracked, face swollen, but the pain was distant, drowned out by the psychic amputation of the Apex Covenant. He lay on the cold metal floor of the Hammerlock core chamber, the air thick with the roar of Eternatus and the frantic energy readings of the overloading system. Silas Vayne, stunned by the power feedback from the unstable Dynamax surge, was momentarily incapacitated, his armor smoking. Ash forced his eyes open, finding Pikachu still struggling uselessly against the null cuffs binding Misty. The mouse's desperation was a small, raw spark of warmth in the cold. It's not over, Ash croaked, the sound barely a whisper. He looked at his 6 pillars, Misty, Serena, May, Iris, Lily, and Dawn, caged but defiant. Their eyes were locked on him, not with pity, but with fierce determination. They were sending him silent messages, pushing against the severance with pure will. Misty's gaze was a torrent of resilience. Get up, catch 'em. Serena's was a soothing flow of grace. We trust you. May's was a burning ember of passion. Fight, Ash. Iris's was a lightning bolt of wildness. Unleash it. Lily's was a deep, quiet pool of soul. Find your center. Dawn's was an impenetrable fortress of willpower. We are here. Ash realized the terrible truth. Vayne had been right. Ash was dependent. He had relied on the Covenant as a shield and a weapon. But the Covenant was not a conduit for power. It was a testament to connection. The severance hadn't drained their strength. It had forced him to see that the Aura Monarch wasn't a title given by Arceus. It was the man forged by these 6 people. He reached into the void where their auras used to hum. He found nothing. He didn't try to pull them back. Instead, he pulled on the memory of their connection, the coolness of Misty's calm, the warmth of Serena's presence, the competitive fire of May, the raw earthiness of Iris, the tender empathy of Lily, and the cold focus of Dawn. He didn't need the external links, he needed to be the nexus. Ash closed his eyes, ignoring the pain, and forced his own shattered aura outward. It was a raw, unfiltered surge, unstable and terrifying, fueled by pain and absolute love. He projected a single thought, not through the electronic comms, but through the deep, primal link Vayne couldn't sever. I am yours. Be mine. A simultaneous, audible gasp ripped through the six pillars. The null cuffs had severed the energy flow, but they had not severed the soul. The moment Ash projected his true, absolute acceptance, not as their leader, but as their partner, the severed ends of the covenant snapped back into place. It wasn't a gentle hum, it was a cataclysmic union. The Apex Covenant erupted from the six women and slammed back into Ash's core, fusing into a single, overwhelming singularity of power. Ash didn't just stand up. He rose. The broken bones knitted instantly, the bruises vanished, and the monarch was remade. He stood cloaked in an incandescent aura, shimmering with all the colors of the six pillars: azure, rose gold, crimson, primal green, crystal white, and diamond dust. He looked down at his hands. They were steady. He felt the entire world spinning around him, the chaos of the Dynamax energy, the thrashing rage of Eternatus, Vayne's fear, and he felt his pillars, fighting for control from their chains. Vayne, recovering from the blast, looked up and froze. Impossible. Vayne shrieked, scrambling back, finally recognizing the true nature of Ash's strength. The null fields were absolute. You forgot one thing, Vayne, Ash's voice boomed, amplified by the six auras. You can't cut a tie that was forged in love. Ash extended his hand toward the imprisoned pillars. He didn't use force, he used will. The null chains, designed to suppress raw power, were overwhelmed by the sheer, harmonized willpower of the Covenant. The chains holding the pillars didn't explode, they dissolved into dust. Misty, Serena, May, Iris, Lily, and Dawn were free. They didn't run to Ash. They deployed instantly. They were no longer six individuals, they were a council of war. Pillars, Ash commanded, his eyes glowing with the unified light. Stabilize Eternatus. Lily, find the soul link. Dawn, focus the will. Lily, now moving with supernatural speed, reached the reactor console. She slammed her hand down, projecting the soul aura into the system, finding the terrified consciousness of the bound legendary. Dawn anchored the entire room, projecting pure willpower to suppress the chaotic Dynamax feedback. The four remaining pillars engaged Vayne and his remaining null troops. It was a terrifying display of competence. May and Iris were a blur of coordinated violence, their fire and wildness auric punches shattering the specialized armor. Serena and Misty used their combined grace and resilience to form a moving shield, deflecting plasma bolts and trapping the remaining soldiers in crystallized water cages. Ash watched his partners fight, their competence now amplified to god-level efficiency. They didn't need him to win. They needed him to command the core threat. Vayne, seeing his army decimated, activated his final weapon. He reached into a hidden compartment and pulled out a shimmering, black sphere, a dimensional bomb. If I can't have stability, no one will, Vayne screamed, preparing to arm the device. I will send this entire core to the Ultra Void. Ash ignored the weapon. He turned his full attention to Eternatus. The legendary was still thrashing, its mind fractured by the null weave remnants. The sky outside the plant was turning a terrifying, chaotic red. Ash walked toward the giant, terrified dragon type. Eternatus, Ash projected, his voice filled with Lily's compassion and Dawn's certainty. Stop fighting the bond. I am not your enemy. Ash laid his hand directly onto the scorched, armored hide of the furious legendary. The Apex Covenant slammed into Eternatus. It wasn't an attack, it was a symbiotic union. Ash projected the calm of Lily's soul, the focus of Dawn's will, the control of Serena's grace, the resilience of Misty's water, the fire of May's passion, and the freedom of Iris's wildness. Eternatus recoiled. The chaotic rage left its eyes, replaced by a terrified understanding. Ash achieved what Vayne couldn't. Harmony with the ultimate chaos. The creature's mind settled, accepting the powerful, unifying will of the monarch. The darkest day vanished. The scarlet sky cleared. Vayne, seeing the legendary calmed, raised the dimensional bomb. Too late, monarch. Vayne screamed. Chaos wins. But as he armed the sphere, a cold, focused energy hit his arm. Chloe. She stood at the shattered console, using the last functioning piece of equipment, a simple power cable, as a whip, which she had electrically charged. You won't get away with this, Vayne, Chloe shouted, not with power, but with sheer, desperate indignation. The charged cable wrapped around Vayne's wrist, fusing the wires and locking his hand onto the activation button. Vayne screamed in pain, dropping the bomb, which rolled harmlessly onto the stable floor. Ash looked at Vayne. He didn't move, he didn't need to. It's over, Vayne, Ash said, releasing his hold on Eternatus. The legendary settled back into its slumber, the threat neutralized. Vayne looked at the smoking device, at his captured troops, and at the 7 people who stood united against him. His eyes fell on Chloe, the betrayer who had ultimately defended Ash. The ultimate chaos is loyalty, Vayne whispered, utterly defeated. Ash walked over to Vayne, who was now kneeling, his armor shattered. No, Ash corrected, kneeling to look him in the eye. The ultimate power is choice. The choice to stand with something bigger than yourself. Ash did not arrest him. He simply deactivated the suit and left him for the arriving League security forces. He turned to his pillars. They stood in a circle, their auras still blazing, exhausted but triumphant. Misty walked over to him first. She didn't speak. She just slammed her lips against his. The kiss was fierce, demanding, and utterly validating. The 6 bonds roared in affirmation. Never do that again, Misty commanded when she pulled back, her eyes wet. Serena stepped up next, her touch tender, correcting his collar, her kiss a gentle promise of devotion. One by one, they all affirmed the bond, not as a duty to Arceus, but as a promise to Ash. The Apex Covenant was no longer a prophecy. It was a choice. A profound, unbreakable union of 7 souls who had saved the world. Ash stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the women he loved, their unified power humming around him. He was the monarch, the nexus, the stabilizer. The world was saved. But the final threat still loomed. Chloe, Ash said, looking at the technical wizard, who was now being embraced by Lily. Did Vayne have any contingency plans? Any final targets? Chloe, pale and shaken, pulled up one last, flickering schematic on the broken console. He never trusted the null tech, Chloe explained, her voice trembling. He had a backup plan. A rogue agent. Sent hours ago. He believed that if he couldn't destroy the Covenant, he could destroy the source of the prophecy. The schematic showed a single location, glowing bright white, Mount Silver. The gateway to the Hall of Origin. A final suicide run, Iris growled. No, Ash said, the fatigue gone, replaced by grim resolve. A final sacrifice. He wants to destroy the Hall of Origin, eliminating the divine influence from the planet entirely. We go now, Misty said, already reaching for her pack. No, Ash looked at his 6 pillars, his absolute strength resting on their collective will. You stay. You stabilize the region. You handle the political fallout. This last fight is mine. The 6 women looked at him, their unified aura pushing back against his decision. Ash, Serena said, her voice strained. We are the Covenant, we move as one. Ash smiled, a look of absolute certainty. I know, but I need you here to stabilize the world. The connection is strong enough now. I can draw on your strength from anywhere. He looked at Pikachu, who was nestled on his shoulder. One more trip, buddy. Let's show Arceus that humanity fights its own wars. Chapter 9 and Chapter 10. The Apex Throne. The climb up MT. Silver was not a journey, it was a pilgrimage of penance. Ash moved with the speed and silence of a phantom, his steps sure on the treacherous, snow-choked paths. He was alone, yet he was not. The full, unified power of the Apex Covenant pulsed through him, a searing constant. He could hear the distinct, supportive voices of his 6 pillars. Misty, Serena, May, Iris, Lily, and Dawn. Not in his ears, but in the deepest core of his mind, urging him onward. Slow down, Ash, Lily's calm, centering voice whispered, a shield against the exhaustion. The air is thin. Breathe. He's stalling. Iris's competitive spirit snapped. He wants you tired for the final confrontation. Ash didn't reply aloud. He pushed, the wind screaming around him. He trusted his team. The 6 pillars were stabilizing the chaotic Dynamax energy in Galar, managing the League's political fallout, and holding the world together so he could finish the fight. He reached the summit, a desolate, wind-swept plateau. The only structure was a massive, ancient stone archway, humming with raw cosmic energy, the gateway to the Hall of Origin. Standing before the archway was the rogue agent, a veteran mercenary with no League affiliation, armed with a backpack bristling with highly volatile dissonance charges. Monarch Ketchum, the mercenary growled, pulling a heavy-duty plasma rifle from his shoulder. Director Vane promised me immortality for this. The destruction of the gods. Vane lied to you, Ash said, the deep resonance of the Covenant making his voice echo unnaturally. Immortality is not found in destruction. The mercenary didn't waste time with dialogue, he fired. Ash didn't dodge. The plasma bolt hit him, but the 6-fold aura flared, absorbing the kinetic energy. The Covenant had become an absolute defensive matrix. Pikachu, disrupt the charges, Ash commanded, pointing to the backpack. Pikachu shot across the snow, a low blur of electric speed. The mercenary spun the rifle, firing rapid, suppressive blasts, forcing Pikachu to weave and dodge. Ash engaged the mercenary in a brutal, close-quarters combat. The mercenary was strong, fast, and driven by fanaticism. But Ash was driven by 7 souls. When the mercenary lunged with a combat knife, Ash met the strike, blocking it with his armored forearm. Your strength is borrowed, the mercenary yelled, pushing against Ash's guard. It is earned, Ash countered, the energy from the Covenant surging through his muscles. He didn't use a move. He used May's passion. He twisted, disarming the mercenary with a lightning-fast wrist lock, and slamming his own knee into the man's chest. The mercenary crumpled. The backpack slid across the ice, stopping just short of the archway. The dissonance charges were armed and counting down rapidly. Ash turned, recognizing the sheer destructive potential of the explosives. They wouldn't just destroy the archway, they would collapse the dimensional integrity between Earth and the Hall of Origin, eliminating Arceus and tearing a permanent rift into the void. Pikachu. Focus. Pikachu, seeing the countdown, launched a massive thunderbolt aimed at the explosives. But the dissonance material Vane had used was designed to absorb elemental energy. The thunderbolt hit the charges and simply overloaded them, accelerating the countdown, now at 10 seconds. 9. 8. Ash, you can't absorb that. Misty's desperate voice sliced through the link. If you use a physical attack, the explosion will be too big, Serena warned, panic edging her usually composed tone. Ash knew they were right. He couldn't risk the explosion. He needed a way to neutralize the charge without kinetic force. He closed his eyes. He reached into the Covenant and pulled on Dawn's willpower and Lily's soul. He needed absolute control and infinite compassion. He ran toward the ticking charges. 7. 6. Ash threw himself over the backpack. He didn't touch the explosives. He cupped his hands around them and focused his entire 6-fold aura into a concentrated beam of absolute harmony. He projected a single, unified signal, purification. He was channeling the will, the grace, the soul, the resilience, the wildness, and the passion, forcing the energy of the Covenant into the dissonance charges. 5. 4. The charges screamed, fighting the purification, turning white-hot and then black-cold, tearing at the fabric of Ash's internal aura shield. He felt his own blood vessels straining. Ash. Stop. You'll burn out your core, Iris shouted, the fear of losing her rival palpable. 3. He's almost there, Lily's voice was strained but clear. The purified aura was winning. The dissonance charges began to shrink, collapsing inward, the chaotic energy neutralizing itself. 2. Ash pushed one final, absolute surge of will into the mechanism. The charges imploded silently, leaving only a puff of sterile dust. Ash collapsed onto the snow, spent. The 6-fold aura faded, leaving him exhausted, but fundamentally intact. The Hall of Origin was safe. He lay there for a long time, listening to the heavy, rasping sound of his own breathing. He didn't need to check. He knew the mercenary was defeated and the League would handle the cleanup. You win, A familiar voice echoed softly in his mind. Ash looked up at the ancient archway. Arceus shimmered into existence, the golden light of the alpha Pokémon subdued, respectful. You fixed the dissonance, Arceus stated. You healed the fractures Vayne created, not with my prophecy, but with your own covenant of choice. You proved that true power is not divine mandate, but absolute partnership. Ash struggled to sit up. I told you, I wouldn't use them as tools. And in doing so, you elevated them to sovereigns, Arceus replied. The covenant is forged, Ash Ketchum. The balance is restored. The world is yours to govern, not as the monarch, but as the apex sovereign. I don't want to govern, Ash admitted, leaning back against the cold stone. I want to rest. I want to live a quiet life. Arceus let out a soundless, gentle breath of understanding. That, too, is within your mandate. You have earned the peace. The alpha Pokémon dissolved, leaving the archway humming with quiet contentment. The prophecy was fulfilled, not in letter, but in spirit. 2 months later, the world was quietly stabilizing. Silas Vayne was in League custody, his organization dismantled. The League, humbled by the near apocalypse, had officially acknowledged the Apex Covenant as the stabilizing force of the world, granting the 7 of them sovereign status, but only if they chose to wield it. They chose home. Ash and his 6 partners now resided on a massive estate carved out of the newly revitalized wild area, a sanctuary they had designed together. It was part gym, part contest stage, part research lab, and part quiet home. Ash stood on the balcony overlooking the vast, snow-melted plain. He was wearing an old, comfortable t-shirt and jeans. He was 22, retired, and completely, utterly surrounded. Misty walked up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Stop staring at the horizon. You'll give yourself an ulcer. I'm just watching the storm clouds clear, Ash murmured, leaning back into her warmth. Serena arrived next, carrying 2 steaming mugs of cocoa, handing one to Ash. It's peaceful. Too peaceful, maybe. Are you bored? Never, Ash smiled, taking a sip. Iris and May were sparring in the open courtyard below, their Pokémon engaged in a friendly, high-level, yet contained battle, their competitive auras sparking with shared exhilaration. Lily was in the conservatory, supervising the final placement of a new regional plant exhibit, her gentle soul aura spreading calm across the entire estate. Dawn was in the gym, focusing on choreography for a new performance, one that was less about ribbons and more about controlled, disciplined power. Ash felt the collective consciousness of his 7 partners, the pillars, humming in his core. It wasn't a demanding buzz. It was the quiet, comforting sound of a house full of love and absolute trust. Misty turned him around and kissed him deeply, a promise of shared future. We need you, she said. I need all of you, Ash replied, looking over her shoulder at the 6 different lives, passions, and destinies that had chosen to intertwine with his own. The monarch had retired. The covenant had settled. The world was safe, anchored by the love and combined will of 7 people who had dared to stand against chaos. The war was over, but the life, the shared, complex, absolute life, was just beginning. Chapter 10 End.